All right. Well, welcome to Raw Automation Talk. I'm your host, Brant Wiederholt from Agile Automation. I'm here with Johnny Jones from Indusol, and today we actually have a special guest, Brian Pribe from Mac Controls. So, how you doing today, Brian?
Oh, doing dandy. It's a Sunday evening and I got nothing else to do but talk about automation.
Well, I can tell you that none of my friends want to talk about automation. So, I hate to say this, but this is my therapy.
Yeah.
If I start talking about OEE and all that kind of stuff, my friends just they just don't hang out with me.
No, no. And honestly, what you need to do instead of get a therapist, you get a consultant. They're pretty much the equivalent of a business therapist that's just going through a consultant. Just complain about small problems you keep running into. It's like, yeah, no, I've been there, kid.
I am convinced that if you do OEE or any type of MES integration, that you do need a full-time therapist.
MES is ungodly complicated. Ungodly. Like nobody kind of prepares you for that level of complication. And then you just have to go through the fire and flames to figure out what the hell's going on. That's been like one of the talks of digital transformation. Since Brent, you and I are both heavily involved in the 4.0 solutions community, we talk constantly about this type of stuff of digitally transforming and all this sort of stuff. But from our perspective, it's from the systems integrator and building out the control systems that provide all this data going up and stuff. And we've been involved on doing MES separately, but we can kind of both agree of like it's a completely different animal that you're having to go against, you know.
Right, right. Yeah, it's getting nasty, and yeah. But before we dive into that, actually, let's probably most likely nobody knows who you are. I mean, to me, I know who you are from LinkedIn and Discord. So
Yeah.
this is a big deal for us to have you on. Just kind of briefly, kind of where are you at? You're in the United States. You're in Ohio. What do you
Well, I'm a
do?
systems integrator based out of Toledo, Ohio. I service like the Ohio, Michigan, and Indiana manufacturing sector for my general customer audience is the small to medium automotive manufacturers and the discrete manufacturing type stuff. But our business also gets involved a lot more recently in process automation and contracted out for MES and SCADA level type of jobs and stuff like that. But that's pretty much the general scope of bot controls, and then also our services pretty much is building out control systems, doing HMI applications, and contracting, of course, for other type of automation services, automation problems.
Gotcha. So, all right. So let's just go right into it, whatever the case is. So, what are the PLCs that you normally deal with, or obviously you're automotive, so Allen Bradley, you're in Ohio,
Yeah, we're
so you'll
surrounded by that. You'll never get away from Allen Bradley if you're in the Michigan, Ohio area.
you would think that if what would happen if all of a sudden you were an Opto 22 guy in Ohio? Would you say that that's a good spot to be in because you're basically you're the only one?
In a way, because you're the only one, it's a blue ocean. Like it's as compared to like a red ocean where it's full of sharks and there's a lot of big fat sharks in the Rockwell house of automation. And I would say when it comes to the Opto 22 line of their products, yeah, there's not many people really have any experience with it. They don't really know it's a product that's out there on the market. For the ones that do, they're already they tend to be advanced manufacturers. They already have their stuff down. They're looking for that new line, that new application where they're looking for a very specific controller to do very specific things or have tons of capabilities that they're looking for.
Yeah.
And if I became the Opto 22 regional guy that you go for, I the biggest hurdle I would say is going to find the customer base that wants it. More or less, they need to be educated about it because it's a completely different platform. It's a completely different way of programming PLCs, and the features that they have. It's just like there's nobody out there, no other manufacturer except for Phoenix Contact with the PLC next line that comes anywhere close to the capabilities that the Groove Epic has. Now,
Do you
granted,
think you
different.
right? Do you see any automotive trying to get PLC Next into the automotive section
I
at
don't
all?
see any. I don't see any other company that's getting it
Wow.
involved. From what I
Okay.
know, now granted,
Right.
Opto 22 it hasn't exactly knocked on my door and told me, "Hey, this is your competitors and this is what they're doing." Um,
Right.
Mostly, you get this type of information from like their website, their white papers on like some of the projects that their customers have been doing with them. But I tend to see a lot of opto epics being used as either in the process industry, energy industry, or in the IoT landscape, that type of stuff.
Yeah. Have you ever messed with like any of the other ones like Omron or Siemens or anything like that? Redline?
Siemens with like their general controllers. God, what do they have? The S7 1200 and the 1500. I've messed with those rarely on the 1500s, but definitely more on the 1200 line. And that's for the specific customers that are a Siemens house. Like they only want to have Siemens controls, and that makes sense. I get it. Um, I have no problems at all when it comes to Siemens. I really like what direction they're going towards for their product line as compared to Allen Bradley with theirs. Um, but it's you have to go into their ecosystem and you have to become a Siemens house to really leverage their ecosystem, their line of products to justify the cost of going
Right.
buying their products.
Yeah, I about a couple of months ago, I posted something on LinkedIn, and I knew I was going to get a lot of heat for it, but I pulled out an old Siemens S7 300 and then put it in a Rockwell, Compact Logics. And of course, somebody, finally posted, "Why would you do this?" And it was because the plant was all Allen Bradley, and these were the only oddballs into them, and they didn't want to house another development area, another piece of software, and the code was written in a certain way, a weird way, so that they wanted everything consistent. So
Mhm.
anyway, I get it. It, but that's depends on which plant, and that wasn't my call.
Yeah, well,
I
not your
think we're
call. You don't
yeah,
get to choose. Sometimes the customer holds the purse and they get to make the decisions on the project. So
right.
obviously,
This one didn't have Ethernet, so we actually quoted them. One of these little units that goes from Profibus to Profinet, and that's the quote that I thought was they were going to take, but no. Anyway,
they didn't want any bit of Ethernet involved.
yeah, well, they just rather than modify that or add another additional card to it, they were just like just get rid of it. They just and then they had and you're gonna hate this. But they wanted to actually, I know this sounds weird, but the customer makes a certain certain products. Let's just say it's chemical products. For some odd reason, they wanted to also make their own case packer. So that's a little weird to me because it just seems like no, 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 no. You need to quit your job and then start a new, company over here on the side.
Side
But it's
venture.
blended in. So are you making case packers or are you making chemicals? So take your pick. But either way, it's what they want, and that's they're going down this road.
Yeah, yeah. Sometimes you can't. You suggest to the customer not making a bad choice, and they make the bad choice anyways. It's like,
I, you know, no idea. Any MontyCon work, or have you even seen MontyCons?
no, no, I have not, and I've only I think once on one project where I was having to debug one of them or make some changes to an existing system for it, but I rarely have I seen any of those out in the field.
Yeah. and you probably haven't done like water and wastewater or anything like that. And then have you dealt with any of the older Modicons yet? The
Oh, hell no.
premium, the quantums, the 984s?
Oh, hell no.
Are you
Luckily not.
okay?
Oh,
Did I just list off a couple? Johnny knows what these are, but anyway,
It sounds unfortunate.
yeah.
oh heck.
Um,
Oh, the first time I worked side by side with Brent, we didn't even know each other was there. Was in a distant plant out in the middle of nowhere called in Chillicothe, Texas.
Hmm.
So
it's such a small little town. Brian, you're kind of familiar with this too, with being in the Midwest, but it's when you drive through a small town that has a speed limit that they set so low that it is just designed to get a speeding ticket.
Toledo was like
Yeah.
that for a little bit. Yeah. Like they
Oh,
had,
how many? What's the population there?
oh, we can tell what Google can tell us. Population of
Um,
Toledo is like 270,000.
okay.
It's actually a fairly large size metropolitan. It's pretty large. Definitely not as big as Detroit. We call it, a lot of people call it Little Detroit, which I mean that speaks a little. I don't know. Kind of makes sense, but
The good part of Detroit or the bad part of Detroit, or both.
I want to say both. Maybe less
All right.
terrible on the roads. That's I want to say that's our perk because our roads aren't as bad as Detroit. Yeah.
All right. So no any work on like Wago or anything else?
No, I would say the main ones that I constantly am working on is definitely Alan Bradley on the control logics and compact logics and the Micro 800 series of products. Phoenix Contact, more recently, and getting into Opto 22 Groove Epic, and then also the Corner Automation Micro SES line of products as well.
We'll get into that. And then unfortunately, Brian, we're going to pull up this again, but you do have some experience with bedrocks. So,
Yeah.
um, what might happen though is because of your experience, you might actually be going into old bedrock systems and actually migrating to something else,
It's
Um,
possible. God, it's I mean, I like their hardware was excellent. The hardware is excellent. It really is. They had some other interesting features to it that I didn't quite understand, like with the magnetic when you put the IO in, it can go in either direction, just in case the operator screws it up. But I would hope that whoever is installing these kind of knows better. um,
what was that a feature that needed to be there, or
no,
was it just
yeah,
added to the cost and then okay?
yeah.
Um, I I'd be kind of curious on why they failed. I haven't done any kind of research on it, but
They
it
were
seemed fine.
expensive products. They were very
I did
expensive.
not know that. Okay.
I want to say for the R10, which is their remote PLC, right? That was coming in at around 10K for that product. And when you consider like getting a PLC, like for the application, like for the specific applications that it could be applied for, like if it was like critical infrastructure with automation needs and high on security, high on like temperature ranges and all that sort of stuff, oh, like you wouldn't go with any other one. You really wouldn't. And it was based on an open platform. The amount of security they had going all the way, they had encrypted chips, like all the way down to the communication between the chips was encrypted.
Okay.
Ungodly.
So
Yeah.
maybe what happened was is that how they got in business was going after that market, and then after they went into that market, this is the byproduct of them making for somebody, maybe military, who knows.
I think their product base was water, wastewater.
Okay.
Definitely water, wastewater, that market.
Okay.
And that I want to say it makes sense in the way of the requirements needed. So like process-based automation has a lot more requirements than general automation like discrete manufacturing does, especially when it comes to water and wastewater applications. I feel like I keep running into, like you start running into like UL 508A certified panels for the process based, while in general manufacturing, customers don't even know what the hell a UL 508A actually is. So of course they don't ask for it. And I feel like that's why there was a lot of features to the Bedrock PLC that they carved out such a small market at such a high price point. They
Right.
probably just weren't able to make that like a profit that they needed for the amount of engineering they also invested.
All right. Well,
Oh, and
Go
back
ahead.
to the whole over-the-air update stuff. In oil and gas, it seems like it's everything has a cellular modem attached to it, and none of it's secure.
Oh yeah,
It's ridiculous how crazy that is. I don't know. Do you ever use like have you ever used like a Sierra Wireless RV50 or an RV55? Have you ever run across any of those?
the Maple System one.
No. This is made by Sierra Wireless. It's a cellular modem.
Okay.
And so the default username and password for these were user. The password was 12345. It wasn't until about 4 years ago, Sierra Wireless finally updated their firmware in these modems to where now you have to physically look on the device to find its password instead of just the default of 12345, because so many of them were getting taken over and becoming part of a bot farm or whatever. Yeah, and so it's amazing how oil and gas has not been attacked like everybody is always afraid of.
There's a lot of opportunities out there. Yeah, it's surprising a lot of hackers have not taken advantage of them.
Yeah.
Yeah, that kind of reminds me of like when one person put up a website and all he did is just found the default setting for all these remote cameras, right? And so it just loaded with everybody's webcam, and it was just all anybody who would put on the web default passwords. Anyway, it's amazing on what he was able to pull up. Anyway, that's exactly what it sounds like. All right, so remote IO. Brian, do you have a preference? Have you used any things that you like, brands that you like?
So remote IO wise, I like sticking with the IO blocks in general. It's always, I don't know, having to. I build a lot of my panels too. I built tons of panels, and I find that doing block IO is always better than having to do field wireable devices, or even having to wire in the panel itself. That's where I've been trying to go a lot more towards, is having a lot of my systems be plug and play. All you have to do, plug the controller in this end, plug it in that end, and it talks. So I like a distributed remote IO network where everything communicates to the PLC over Ethernet rather than from a IO card that's attached to the PLC. Because you might get vendor lock-in, you might get stuck with a really old, a controller that doesn't sell them anymore, or you just simply can't buy any of them because they're out of stock. I much rather prefer to, if I need to buy another IO card, being able to plug and play and make all my changes in just the software.
Right. Yeah, and then as an added bonus, I like using the block IO so I don't have to give Johnny any kind of work. That's what I do. No, I'm totally with you. I had where I really like the block IO is when I know that they're going to be moving it somewhere else. So like I've installed these on sometimes like tanks or nearby tanks, and I've getting analog signals for the level, or maybe a valve or two or whatever, and they've already told me, they're like, this tank is going to move to another location, and so therefore all I got to do is run Ethernet and power
Hours.
to over there, and obviously no panel, no nothing, no wires. Well,
Nothing.
wires, but for the
Yeah.
cables, but
Yeah, it's just like a way better way of going about building your systems. And
right.
it's eventually what might happen is like machine builders will provide their tooling, like their machines, where it's just IO blocks. All the
Right.
sensors are there, and then you just kind of plug and play with them.
That's it.
Yeah.
Yep, totally with you. Um, I did see on LinkedIn it was kind of cool, but they put it into a clear box. So they had the cables coming in through a clear enclosure.
Yeah.
That way, you can actually read the actual cables coming in and what those cables were. So, and then it didn't get messy. So I have my background is sometimes in chemicals and cosmetic, and that stuff gets everywhere, and adhesive. So sometimes you might still have to put them in a case. That's all. But it was at least it's clear so you can see.
Yeah, I've I have one customer that they do a lot of abrasive product, and I came in the middle of the project, and it was installing a bunch of sensor cables into the panel. It took me probably a week landing each individual wire going into the panel. I'm under a conveyor machine,
Right.
trying to pull in all these random length cables in, trying to make it all look neat, flowing in, going into one part of the panel onto the other side of the panel, each and every little tiny wire, debugging, trying to figure out why it's not working all the time. And it just reminds me every single time why, like, I always want to go towards plug and play, like the M12 receptacle connectors every single time. It's like, this is why you go with this product. So you don't have to be on your hands and knees for hours on end plugging these things in. Hell, even like I buy it for my own sanity.
Right. Yeah. Every once in a while. Well, anyway, I prefer the M12. The M8 is something that I prefer not. Right.
Yeah, I'm not a big fan of the M8. I guess it's good for like the really small things. I get that. But M12 is really like, it's solid enough in the hand for the operator to be plugging it in. It doesn't feel janky. And if you bump it, you're not going to break it.
Right. Totally agree.
I have
Totally
a
agree.
question.
Yeah.
Why are operators having to change IO points on blocks?
The maintenance guys are, because the operators bust them.
Okay.
You have you guys both felt how the block IO though? It is a solid brick. I mean,
The Turk ones? Oh yeah. No, they're solid solid aluminum. It's the same story with the Balloff ones. They're solid aluminum. They have the board, the board in there encased in epoxy. Like it is built in there, and you're not breaking that circuit board. You'd have to try really hard to do it. Kudos to whoever does.
All right. Let's talk about HMIs. So you're actually, we'll go down those lists. Have you ever worked with, I mean, obviously being in Allen Bradley area, you're going to work with panel views. That's almost a guarantee.
Yeah.
Any Seymours, Redline?
So on Seymour's and Redline, I have not. I think maybe on one Seymour system, one Automation Direct special, for doing all that stuff. But yeah, Seymour. Proface, definitely on Proface, like Maple Systems Proface stuff.
Okay. And that's what you see even in the automotive. Okay.
Yep. Even in automotive.
Okay.
How many?
But you actually
Oh,
go ahead.
I was going to ask him how many of those have you seen that were still branded Zycom on the Proface?
Ooh. Ooh. I don't know if I have. I guess, I guess that's more of a your guys' problem.
What are you trying to say? We're old?
I'm saying you guys are seasoned. I'm the fresh one here.
Uh,
Um,
I have a
but
girlfriend.
so
I know
let's
how to
look.
dodge around the questions.
Speaking about old, I'll gladly admit, at least 20 years ago, Horner came to us. Yeah. Anyway, it's they've been around for a while.
Yeah. No, they've been around since I think the 80s, if I'm not mistaken. Now, granted, like you could say that for just about every other brand. Um, but they steadily have been building out their automation product line for a good amount of years. And what they've been able to put out there is a very affordable and very capable line of products. To go over, I guess, some of their stuff. The main ones that they sell, or like their main flagship stuff, is like their XL and their micro OCS line of products. So pretty much what it is an HMI, PLC, and IO combo. You get, I think it's like 16 points of input, 16 points of output. You get analog. You can do PWM. You can do count. You can do a lot of stuff in regards to IO. PLC wise, you get your ladder logic. You get your structured text. I believe they have function block as well with it. And on the HMI side, they do, HMI typical. They can do web server. They can do FTP. They can do data logging. They can do more IoT type things with MQTT. So it's a lot of capabilities, and just for the X4 product itself for just $600. And if you're looking for like an OEM controller, hard to beat any other one, And it's got a lot of expandability too.
Gotcha. The CAN, what is that? Communication or like CAN bus or what was it?
Yeah, it can do CAN bus. It has its own proprietary CAN protocol, but I mean,
Okay. And then it's that MJ 1 and 2 that you can actually branch out to remote little modules. Is that correct?
Yep. So you can expand out onto remote IO. They have their own line of remote IO as well. And those can also be Ethernet based. I actually, you might need to be corrected later on that, but no, they're building out a lot of their lines on it at a very affordable price, but yet their systems being very capable of it. They're also eventually, I think it's September, coming out with their updated programming software for it. It's all free, so there's no like having to buy a license every single year just to program the PLCs. The only type of licensing there is for like special features for the controller, like in this case for the micro, it's purchasing a web server license or doing an MQTT license, but the cost of which it's very affordable, and they have different ranges for what you're trying to do as well.
Cool. Yeah, it was almost probably 20 years ago, but I looked into it, and it was a scenario where all of a sudden I needed the HMI, but I also needed to do some remote IO. So anyway, cool, very neat. Um, any Seymour versus Horner versus PanelView versus Proface? Any one that you like or don't like, or have you had any problems with them?
I mean, PanelView sucks because of the price and just what it is. It's a dated software that really just is not up to snuff with where our control systems are going. Like it's very, especially if you have multiple of those, you have to program each and in every individual one. They each need to have their own set of screens, set of programs, and everything else, and they're all different, and you need to maintain them dated. Like anytime you have a change, it's like it's
Right.
not built for the future applications, like the
Right.
future manufacturers.
Me and Johnny have talked about this one, but what the price is so high that what happens is that they opt for the smallest little screen, and then the user has to deal with this 24/7 or whatever when they're operating it,
Yeah.
and it just it's an awful experience. So because their price point, it actually makes the machine awful to work with. Mainly because the screen gets smaller. Anyway, so that's my complaint. I'm a, I'm doing my best on this planet to do as large as the screen as I possibly can. So anyway,
And that's the right way. Let's be honest, that's the right way. You really do need a big screen for just being able to provide all the information and the capabilities that your customers are asking for.
right. And if I can say this, there's just a lot of people that are getting. I got to be careful on my words here, but just older and their vision is a little bit less.
Oh,
Uh,
you're talking about the
you
old
see,
parts in general, where they just can't see anymore. I mean, there's. I'll
I
be.
mean, I was, yeah. And here's my joke. Here I was working
Yeah.
inside of I was actually working in New York, and
Mhm.
literally we were trying to get a machine, a whole plant up and running. And although I'm capable of doing a lot of different things, my own task was there was three other guys that needed wires, the label on it read off to them, and that's what I did for $150 an hour. Is the only guy that in the plant at 2 o'clock in the morning that could read off labels. So anyway,
Yeah, and I mean, it's not like it's a new challenge, I guess, that you need to adapt to because there's not many people in our industry that know what we do. Like the skill sets are they're high skill sets. So the people that only know this sort of stuff, they're older. They want to be retiring hell even, and they're not exactly looking forward to having to read off every tiny little label for the individual wires and stuff. And it kind of speaks to a larger problem too, where the older generation, the ones that grew up building all these products, building U.S. made products, they're starting to retire. And not many people, young people, are going to be replacing them. I don't know anybody my age that is in my industry. Like even in the community Discord, on LinkedIn,
right, right.
I've run into only two engineers that are my age doing my sort of stuff. I've met a lot of controls engineers. Only two of them. That's maybe 1%.
Where do you think they're going? They're going to go into the script writing, right? For other.
If they're technically inclined, they're going IT. They're going manage IT management. They're maybe doing UI design for websites and stuff like that. And I mean, don't get me wrong, that's like demanding market. But the problem is like there's such a high demand now for the type of people that know how to do this sort of stuff. There's barely anybody that knows how to do it, especially doing it in a way that is OT centric rather than IT centric. You know, so I'm not exactly sure how our industry is going to manage that transition. I just know it's not going to be pretty and it's not going to be cheap.
That's yeah. I totally with you. It's and I yeah. I don't want to make any kind of predictions because those are kind of difficult. But yeah, definitely a miss.
Mm-hmm.
Definitely a miss. So let's talk about this. This is something that me and Johnny have talked about, and maybe you can have your own opinion about it.
Mm-hmm.
My problem is that I'm mostly doing SCADA work. and I'm
Yeah.
not necessarily doing a lot of machine work there every once in a while. My issue is that I've got to it'll be a small little HMI. I can't do any trending. I can't do this. I can't do that. Whatever the case is. And my first thing is to this machine that they want more data from and all kinds of stuff. I'm like, I want the small HMI gone, and I don't mind it. I can't scale out if I'm having to replace all these panel views with, say, ignition or whatever the case is. So my preference would be is that the OEMs need to start doing bigger HMIs,
Mhm.
or have them to where they're PC based, or have them to where they have an HMI that's HTML5s. That way, the only change, and by the way, I I can't I can't scale if I have to redo like a whole proface or a panel view, whatever the case is, with a SCADA system. I've
Mhm.
got to be able to go into the program, change the navigation to where it goes onto the SCADA system for an MES type of pull down. Hey, I'm going to on this machine, I'm going to start doing a change order, and it starts logging the change order. And then I can go back to the OEM screen and interface for the rest of the working of the machine.
Mhm.
And then if I want MES or OEE, that kind of stuff, I just go to the navigation, switch over to SCADA, switch back. So this is where I would like to see the future. I just
Mhm.
don't know how to whether it was going to ever get to there, because I can't scale. I can't scale
Yeah.
this out if I have to go to every HMI.
A lot of problems involved with that is when the customer is first buying the machine. A lot of them do not scope the HMI side to be part of that or to have that functionality or eventually down the road having that functionality. It would
Right,
be a lot easier for a systems integrator to, okay, it's got to be PC based HMI
right.
where you
At
load
least,
up the application, whether it's Ignition, Edge, or whether it's some other software based HMI application. And then you build the program from there. And then like there's only a couple of platforms that are capable of, okay, now you have the machine screen of it. Now let's add that onto the SCADA and then have it be a SCADA system now. You
right,
know, not many systems are designed that way at all.
right,
And it kind of goes like, okay. You, sometimes you disconnect the machine or something happens where the main SCADA server maybe is down. Okay. Well, now your problem is going to be your HMI is trying to load in the HTML5 screen for it, doesn't know anything that's going on, and then the PLC is relying on the HMI to get data from the operator on what to do. And so now you have a bit of a problem of like, okay, well, disconnecting the machine, or maybe you move the machine, or you're not happy with the way that your SCADA system is set up. It's like, okay, well, now do we need to do a distributed SCADA system where the machines can be standalone, but can also integrate into it?
right.
And right now, I don't think there's any product out there that can alleviate that type of headache. You either have to
Right.
go individual machine and manage each of those and maybe connect to them directly to get the views that you need from them, or you do it where it's a full SCADA system where each HMI is part of that SCADA and the machine just has to interact with the SCADA system.
Right.
So
Yeah.
really, that's,
And
that's part of it. It's just that's just a big problem.
right. Um, all right, so let's talk about this. Brian, do you go out remote work? I mean, as far as like call outs and that kind of stuff?
Often, often.
All right, so here's my take on this, and maybe you can add to it. My problem is that we're normally dealing with projects per se, and it's more of a business issue. But when we're working on projects and we get a call out, it stops us right in our tracks. Oh, we got to stop with what we're doing. We now have to like make an emergency call out. It interrupts their day. They have to drive there, drive back, and that kind of stuff. And maybe they've got to find some, old cables because we're going to connect to something super old, that kind of stuff. So it's a huge interruption. It would be my preference if all of a sudden that depending on the size of the customer, that they would have their own support group. And we were only called even if, after you cycle the power, restart everything, whatever. So we try to get our customers to have a first line of defense per se. Do you see yourself being called for a first line defense? Oop, we lost him.
Yeah, it looks like we lost him.
Oh, there you are.
Or I'm not sure what happened. 10 o'clock happened, and then system said bye-bye.
So do you see yourself being called for first line of defense, or do you prefer to be called after they've tried everything, or how's?
So typically, well, customers do both. If they, well, honestly, I think a lot of them, they try to solve the problem right then and there, but when it goes outside of their scope of capabilities, or, they fear, they don't want to go into the software to debug what the hell's going on there, because obviously that's where the problem is, even though most of the time it's like a sensor problem, a broken cable, or you just need to push down on the part like a little harder, and then the machine runs perfectly fine. So, I mean, yeah, I become like the second line of defense for it, but preferably what I would prefer is I want to be able to have a remote connection to my control system, because I want to know, okay, I have no idea what the hell is going on with the machine. We have no idea what's going on. The only information that we get from it is when we get a phone call that it's done. I think from a service standpoint, that is the worst position to be in. There's nothing proactive about it. There's nothing that, like, we have systems in place or like provided good information to know like what the actual problem is. The only problem that we know is that the machine is down, and whatever it's the operator, whether it's the plant manager or another engineer, they're trying to tell us, okay, hey, it's not working because of like the software. The software is not letting it move. It's like, it's not the software. We know it's something else. We know it's just like a missing step, but we don't have that information. So I much rather provide my systems where I have remote access for monitoring the machine. I want to know, how well is it performing? Is it going down like 40% of the time? I would love to know that, so that I can go out to the plant. I can give them a call prior to there being a problem. It's like, hey, I've realized that your guys' like machine that I built you has been going down a lot. Is everything going okay with it? I'm seeing sensor A keeps skipping out on it, and that's causing a lot of problems. In that proactive approach, we can service our customers way better. And if there's a issue when it comes to like software wise, we can immediately like fix whatever software issue is going on then and there, rather than having to schedule a drive out, drop whatever we're doing, and having to go out, rather than just it's a 15-minute call and a 15-minute solve on the problem, and then get right back onto the projects you're working on.
Do you have VPN solutions that you currently use, or is it do you see your customers forcing a certain VPN solution to you?
I don't have customers forcing me into them, because they just don't. I go into two routes where you try marketing to them, you try giving them the solution to the problems that they're running into, but they don't bite. They don't bite it. They don't want it. So it's like, okay, hey, I can't go out to the field right now. I don't have access to the machine, but we could talk later about setting up a remote connection, and I try striking that conversation back up with them. Doesn't happen. So what am I left to do is just wait for the problem to keep being a problem.
Yeah, I don't like the idea but I can see where some people will just increase the price of the cost on an emergency type deal, make it painful for the customer to where having a VPN solution is financial, makes financial sense. But I haven't got to that point, but I can see where if you would abuse it,
Mhm.
yeah,
I think
it would
that
be a
there
problem.
needs to be, well, when it comes to emergency calls, you need to rationalize your cost that is associated with you dropping everything that you're doing, the
Right.
momentum you've had, and how much time you can dedicate to it. And sometimes it becomes like 1.5 times the cost or 2 times the cost uh,
Right.
for just a normal service call, you know?
Yeah. The like I've got two guys that are nearby,
Mm,
and my problem is that I don't want to abuse them. I think they would get really tired with they got their headphones on, they're doing some programming, and then they get this emergency call and they have to go out again. And
mhm.
then if I did that enough, as an employer, I think that they would get tired and leave. So I have to think about like, okay, well, if this is happening too much, then I've got to cut it off myself.
Yeah, that's a
So that's
a big meta problem right there. It's like, you're trying to solve the problems, but you're also not trying to make more problems for yourself.
right.
It,
Yep.
it's a
Johnny,
big
any take on
problem.
this? But
Oh yeah, yeah.
Oh
Go.
shoot, I don't know. I just find it amazing that we have so many people that are technicians that work for these companies. That's their job, and they uh, they manage to keep their job and not be able to solve low level task of hey, a transmitter's out, or hey, this limit switch broke, or you know we resort to it. I think about our conversation that we had in the OEE podcast was the barcode reader where the operator says that it's a maintenance issue. Maintenance gets there and says it's an operator issue. Nothing gets
right.
solved. Well, you got you know these controls technicians that work for these big companies. They need to man up.
They
And
need to. There are people.
exactly, instead of, hey, I know this guy down the road. He just got out of rehab, but he was an electrician. He's good with a computer, so we're gonna make him an automation tech. So now he's in charge of running this line because he'll stay here till 2 o'clock in the morning if we need him to.
Mm. It's and that speaks to a larger problem for manufacturers of we've been trying to here's another thing too is like we're trying to compete with offshore manufacturers as well. We've been competing with China, we've been competing with Mexico, you're competing with other countries, you're competing all around the globe to provide the type of products that American consumers are trying they want to buy. Well, because you're having to compete with all of these markets that have way lower labor costs, whether it's technical or whether it's just general automation, general assembly, what happens is you start then being a lot cheaper for your employees. And when doing so, then you have less skilled employees, less motivated employees. And for those that don't care to learn more on, like as an operator, they're meant to put parts together, press the button on the machine, and let the machine do the rest of it. Well, we don't exactly empower those operators to find problems, to try to look for ways to improve on the machines. We're not trying to invest them and incentivize them to do so. We're trying to tell them stay in your place, be as affordable as possible for us.
I do see some of that changing in some of the processing plant world, like in the refineries.
Mm-hmm.
They're starting to hire more. They're hiring operators that are basically trade school trained technicians.
Yeah.
So that not only are they the ones operating the plant, but they kind of have a general understanding of how everything works. I am seeing that happen more and more, but I don't know if that's really.
It's more of a long-term investment is
Yeah,
what's happen is the people with all the know-how, the old skills that don't write all the information down, those are going to retire. They're going to be leaving the market. And those skills that they built up are also going to leave. What's going to be left is young, unskilled employees that don't know what they're doing, that could have, like for the 5 years that they were working for an employer, they could have built up those skill sets if they were invested, if that company invested into them for doing so. But we don't do that. And we're going to be paying a really hefty price for doing so. A lot of companies are going to go under because, or they're going to get bought out because they didn't do any of that. So it's more of a long-term investment. And for those that don't make that long-term investment, their options are going to be bankruptcy or being bought out. So those are their options.
Yeah, I've even had a customer want some of my guys to go out on the field and then train their guys. And of course,
that's another big thing. Yeah.
We don't have the, I mean, my guys aren't, they're programmers. They're not teachers. So, you know, my answer to them was, is that I can give you contacts to have your guys go through what my guys have done years ago, when we were training them. But, you know, they need a training protocol, whatever the case is. I think if they offered it to them, some of those employees would probably stay. But if either one of us was in a career that didn't see any kind of advancement, weren't seeing any kind of education, I know I'm bailing.
Yeah.
I'm not.
Oh yeah, no.
You know,
and I've done the same. It's like,
so
you're not getting information, you're not getting any help to improve you and in sense improve their company.
Right.
Why would you stay?
Right.
You get there's greener fields everywhere else.
Yep. All right. So let's go really quick. So you've done automotive. You also do assembly, pick and place type work. Would you say that that's probably about 80% of your work, or how?
Yeah,
What's the percentage?
Definitely 80% of my work is more on that general automation of assemblies.
Okay. And then as far as I guess you do CNC machines or integration to them. So I guess do you do like where the robot needs to communicate with the CNC machine, where, you know, are the doors open? Is it ready for the part? You know, that kind of stuff. Is that the signals you go on sending back and forth? Is that?
So there's, I wouldn't say too much on the robotic side with CNCs. If you are going to that route, I recommend going with the OEM's supply of it. So if you go with like Doosan sells like their Fanuc robots with them. Go with that. Stick with that, because there's a reason why those systems tend to be very complex, and the communications required for them also is complex. So I've been doing I've been involved on a project for integrating CNC controls, laser controls with a PLC and stuff. And some CNCs are not designed for doing that. They really are not. And you have to, I don't know. I think I've gone through a lot of projects where they were just bad to start with, and the end product just like was just a heap of whatever you needed to get them to work. You know, the planning was just not exactly there.
It's like I mean, it doesn't even have to be a CNC machine as far as I'm concerned. I mean, Johnny's sounds like all of us. You're bringing back some memories here. Yeah, okay. And then, so maybe it made sense to even do it on a fresh CNC machine. Like, what does the CNC machine like cost generally? I don't even know.
Depends on what you're trying to do, what you're trying to buy. I would say starting off 10K, and then you can go all the way up to 250, like $250,000. And then for the really nice ones, like forgetting the names of them. DMG Mori, like those, you can expect to pay $500,000 to over $1 million for just the one CNC. But you better know what you're already doing with them.
Gotcha. So at some point, no one did the and probably it was probably made from a decision person that didn't know that it was going to be like interfacing or interfacing with a old CNC was going to be hard. And so that's why they wanted you to do it, and they didn't realize, into it that this is a mess.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay.
I got brought in like midway through on
Okay.
like they're just about done on the engineering side of things. And I get brought in and it was okay, integrating a micro 800 with a hot CNC with lasers, and the way that you had to communicate with the hot CNC wasn't you had to do it through the G code, and you had to do it through individual relays terminals on there. Nothing over Ethernet, God forbid. God forbid that you try to do anything over Ethernet with it, And so we just had a ton of IO that we're trying to connect to the CNC with adding in other parts of like more IO to it with a safety circuit that doesn't involve the actual Haas CNC safety circuit. It's a completely different CNC. It's a completely different safety circuit that then also needs to tie in with every other type of component. It became a bit of a handful, and we kind of got left holding the bag with this bad idea. It was like, this was a bad idea to start, but now we're holding the bad idea. Now we have to figure out how to put this bad idea together. And we eventually came out with a pretty good solution that was reliable. As soon as we put it into the customer's hands, they busted the laser head twice. Now that machine is still down because they can't get replacement parts because the operators threw it into the wall. Hard to solve
Yep.
those problems,
Yeah.
And what you do in that point, like, you really need to understand the problem. You really need to understand the engineering problem. Maybe you shouldn't use a CNC for doing all of your motion control. Maybe it should be a robot instead, where you can do a lot more niche type of design with it, with less force required than what would be needed for a laser. Because a laser doesn't need high motor torque power. It just needs consistent steps in a general fast motion to get it done. But
Gotcha.
anyways, that was my a bit and piece and parcel of a horror story.
All right. So 80% you're kind of doing the automotive and CNCs and picking up places, whatever. But I also know that you do. So you're the rest of the 20% you're actually doing cables, correct?
Oh, God, don't get me started on cables. There's one thing I will market right now. I will not be making custom cables. I do not like making custom cables, and I will price them accordingly for the amount of frustration that they cause.
I want to see how bad these cables. I want to see what these cables look like.
They become like 30 part numbers for one cable.
Whoa.
Yes. And now, granted, like, I did this as a favor to a customer. They've been good. They are in a pinch, and it was just a big headache, which was not really worth my time and money for doing so, but it was for solving the customer's problem. And that's what you just need to do, is be customer-centric first. Because eventually what happens, if you're able to solve these basic problems that are pretty big headaches for them, solve those first, then they're more inclined to give you the bigger projects, one where you can actually stretch your muscles out and actually show what you can kind of do, and like doing it the way that you would way more prefer than jumping into the middle of a random project that you have no design decisions on.
Right. Yeah. That actually reminds me of a good friend of mine that works for a very large contractor.
Mm-hmm.
And his advice to me was learn Outlook and learn PowerPoint. because that's what your bosses want to know how to do. And so that's how he got promoted all the time. It's just being there, knowing exactly what the person or the customer wanted, and in this case, it was his bosses. So that's his advice towards
Being
working up
able
the
to
core.
present it in a power just the screen presentation, PowerPoint
Oh yeah,
presentation.
the Power BI. Is that what
Yeah.
you're talking about?
Well, oh no,
Oh
no,
yeah.
even oh god, don't get me started on Power BI. I don't understand why that is still a good why people gravitate towards it. I don't get it. It's have you worked with Power BI?
I have not. There's been a couple of people that have shown me, and I've seen some of the dashboards, but I've not worked with it. I mean, from my understanding is that it's a Microsoft product, so Excel sheets, databases, it connects to virtually a lot of stuff. So, but
Yeah.
that's it.
How could I explain what it could do? It's yeah, you can do a bunch of like data plugins for it, whether it's database, whether it's spreadsheets, and you can do displays on them. It doesn't. It's not very good. It's not fast. The way you have to organize the data isn't good. And if you're trying to scale from it, oh my god, it's horrendous to do so. I don't understand why customers want to go that route. Somebody feeds them some sort of Kool-Aid and just pushes them into the wrong direction. Like they blindfold them with whatever Kool-Aid compounds are in there, and they push them into that direction of like going into a cliff.
Yeah, uh,
And
that sounds very similar to OEE solutions. That we'll actually have to talk about a little bit later.